If everyone could take their seats so we could get started. We'll call the July meeting of the Long Island Railroad Committee to order. Do we have public comments?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we do. We have 5 speakers signed up to speak. The first 2 speakers are, and I apologize if I get the name wrong, John Michno, followed by Omar Vera.
Mr. Michnow here? Yep. Oh, go ahead.
I wasn't even originally planning on being here today, but after this weekend's incident involving the derailment of a Long Island Railroad train at Penn Station, I see that there is still much work to be done. I could have brought up the poor construction design at Hicksville, which unfortunately for some reason is not being built to the same standards as Wantagh, and similar elevated stations on the Babylon branch. I could have also talked how back in June the Long Island Railroad reneged on its promise not to touch mainline service during the final phase of Harold signal testing. But instead, we have to talk about the failure to immediately inform the public of this derailment at Penn. I was hoping the new Long Island Railroad president was going to fix things and have been encouraged greatly by him. But the problem is he's surrounded by people who worked under the previous administration, including the vice president and all the way up to many others, including the chairman and many of you here on the MTA board. How can a new leader work properly when he's surrounded by many who still believe in doing things the old way? It is clear the interests that favor some well-connected areas with certain demographics, mainly on the Babylon branch, continue to get preferential treatment by this railroad. How come Belmore and Merrick, which are modern, beautiful stations, get treated to a renovation while on the same branch, older stations like Freeport and Baldwin are forgotten? This organization continues to break Title VI laws as well as many others, and that brings us to the derailment, which has affected today's commute. Why weren't people notified sooner? And why, once again, are we having trains skip Jamaica and leave people to dram on overcrowded trains while other trains with room sail on by without stopping? The corruption and discrimination at this organization are completely out of control. If we are going to truly be moving the Long Island Railroad forward, we will need many more new faces to represent all Long Island Railroad riders. And I just want to touch on one thing because I was at the Metro North meeting. Here, Metro North is getting new diesel equipment. Long Island Railroad's had a diesel shortage. They've had to cancel trains because of it, and I don't think it's fair. Why isn't the Long Island Railroad getting new diesel equipment? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Omar Vera.
Greetings, MTA Board's Long Island Railroad Committee. Welcome to the July edition of your committee meeting. All right, we got a couple things to discuss. Derailment last weekend was a little concerning. We need to have like zero, like at least closest to zero as possible. Oh, and this is my first time speaking here since Philip Eng was promoted to be the leader of Long Island Railroad. Congratulations, sir. I know it's belated, but I'm giving you my the congratulations because I haven't been able to talk in the past months due to time constraints. I was wondering if under your leadership we could put Far Rockaway as part of Zone 3 instead of Zone 4 since it's part of New York City within the borders of the city. I understand it goes through Nassau County, but still, I'm a city man. New York City's borders should be respected. And last but not least, I fully considered congratulations on the part of that freedom ticket thing that you have for the Atlantic branch and sections in Southeast Queens for discounts. But we should be having the joint AirTrain LIRR ticket for those who want to go to JFK from Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn. That's all I have to say, and have a happy August recess. Happy summer.
Our next 2 speakers are Jason Pinheiro, followed by Orrin Getz.
Good morning, Long Island Railroad Committee. Good morning, Philip Eng. This weekend's derailment at Penn Station was totally unacceptable and we had to wait over 24 hours to be notified, Elisa Pica should be resigned or fired because she is not doing her work properly, although that I was told that she was promoted under Patrick Nowakowski's leadership. But Philip Egg, I know that you could do your job, and I have very high hopes on you, but it is time to change those who are below you, because you are from Smithtown and use the railroad every single day. It is time to change the leadership that is below you. And of course, another concern that I'm going to bring this month is that why we having temporary platforms at stations like Woodside, Forest Hills, and Kew Gardens. Alternatives could be having these trains skip these stations when track workers perform and have the subway cross honor between Penn Station and Jamaica, because the E and the F serve both Forest Hills and Kew Gardens, and for Woodside they could use the 7. So why not do that partnership with New York City Transit to do this cross honoring like the railroad did when the subway wasn't running east of Forest Hills. So thanks for your attention this month.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, the gentleman isn't here to pass out 2 articles to you, Mitch Pally, and to Susan Metzger. They're from Trains Magazine, and they're very interesting, and I hope you can read it and pass it along to the staff. It shows that the Southeast Pennsylvania Transportation Authority has successfully installed PTC well ahead of the December deadline. And some of the issues that the Southeast Pennsylvania Transportation Authority encountered were similar to what the Long Island Railroad is going to have when it does its PTC installation, like compatibility with the Amtrak system, because you're running into Penn Station. So it's a great article, and I hope you can read it and pass it along to the staff and give yourself a little more insight on what is going on with this PTC installation. Another thing that was brought up also by another person is the enhancement of the diesel fleet. Now, New Jersey Transit has multi-level cars that are also used in Montreal and now also used in Maryland. And I think that the Long Island Railroad management should look into buying some of these cars to enhance your diesel fleet. You're short equipment, and these cars would be very, very helpful in expanding your diesel fleet to meet your transportation needs. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Mr. Murray Bowden.
Railroad safety at crossings is an international issue. It's not just local for around here. I follow accidents in railroads, and it's right across the world. The solution is right here. Solution is traffic lights and gates. They're all over the city. Willis Avenue Bridge, Madison Avenue Bridge, Hutchinson River Parkway. But the problem is you all are afraid to say, wait, why are we doing it the way we did it 50 years ago? Somebody has to stand up to the federal administration who are asking you to implement rules that no longer are valid, and stand up and say, this is crazy. You cannot institute a new system when the current system is there and works all over. If you go to Florida, and some of you do, and all of the canal crossings are gates and traffic lights. The learning curve for motorists is low, because they've seen it all over. So why don't you stop using flashing red lights in East Hampton? Because you're all afraid to stand up and say, hey, the emperor has no clothes. It's as simple as that. I'm out of here. It's been taken over by a consulting firm who read you the law as it is written. I have no standing. They do. They did it at the Whitestone Bridge. If you have a question as to the legality of getting rid of red lights at railroad crossings, ask the consultant that you use to write a report on it. And I only ask that the law department enforce the law as currently written.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes our public speakers for today.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our speakers. I have the minutes of the June 18th meeting in the book. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? All in favor? Okay. Phil, are there any changes to the work plan? No changes to the work plan. Okay. So why don't we go right into your report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to first actually address an incident that occurred over the weekend, as many of our speakers brought up. It's something that I notified the board yesterday about, and it occurred at our West Side Yard facility. It was as a non-revenue train was making a move in the yard where the cars number 6 and 7 of a 10-car consist derailed in making that move. It was one where immediately upon hearing of the incident, my first questions to the folks was, were there any customers on board or customers impacted? There were no customers at the time impacted. Did this affect our schedule that we were currently running? And we were able to run our weekend schedule even with the incident that occurred. And then obviously, were there any employee injuries or any issues that needed to be taken care of promptly? The operating engineer did report back pain. I am pleased to mention that I did speak with the family, and they said that it's minor, but he is getting it checked just to make sure, out of precaution. So having discussed that with the team, the first priority then for my intent was to report to the scene and make sure that the staff there, as well as myself, were assessing the situation. We were evaluating how best to address the situation to make sure what equipment we needed, what staff we needed, and what would be the appropriate measure to do this safely and efficiently. Once that was done, towards the evening that night, we also decided, because of the situation where it was with the low clearance, we needed some support. We reached out to Metro North to borrow the use of their low clearance crane. They obliged, and that is a big help that helped us with this response. We also reached out to Amtrak as we needed to borrow some locomotives to assist us with moving these cars. And all of those motions were being put in place through the evening. When I returned back to the scene on Sunday morning, and as our service planning and transportation folks were developing and reviewing any potential impacts for Monday, after that was all in place and all of the response measures were in place, that's when I notified the board just before 1 p.m. on Sunday, because at that point I had enough information to be able to talk about the situation and to also begin preparing and reviewing what we needed to message to our customers, which was my priority, to make sure that when I do message, it's with regards to specific information on the information on their schedule, which we did later in the day. A couple other things that we're still reviewing the cause. The folks are still out there working and making some repairs, but we were able to issue a service plan to our customers later in the day, and we were able to implement that service plan today as we continue to do work in the West Side Yard. I believe we have a photo. I just wanted to show this one photo. This is the Metro North low clearance crane. It is a specialized piece of equipment that we do not own, but Metro North has, and it provided a dramatic ability for us to reset the car onto the track and re-rail it. I would like to note that safety is utmost importance to us. It will always be the top priority. That was my focus on Saturday. That was my focus to make sure that our response, the people respond, the equipment, the materials, that was number one that I had to take care of. And as I mentioned earlier, our crews are continuing to work at the scene. We do anticipate, and we're preparing and reviewing potential PM schedule changes. It will be similar to this morning. It'll be a very small percentage of the PM peak, and that information will be shared as soon as that's available. I'd like to also now talk a little bit about some of the other things that are important with regards to these types of incidents and how I'd like to continue moving things forward. A lot of important work, a lot of critical work that's ongoing at the railroad right now as we continue to upgrade our system and improve service reliability through Long Island Railroad Forward. I'd like to announce a new initiative that we're implementing today that we want to further enhance the customer experience, serve those customers that may have additional needs. We're inaugurating it today, as I mentioned. It's called Long Island Railroad Care. It will serve as a new customer assistance program for those who need help in using our system. It's an on-call service. It's 24/7, 7 days a week, including holidays. Until now, customers previously in need of an extra helping hand to board and or exit our trains have only been able to call in advance of their rides between the hours of 6 and 10 p.m. And at the time previously, it was a requirement of 3 hours advance prior to their trip. Under Long Island Railroad Care, we're not only providing extended hours, but customers will also be able to request assistance closer to their travel time and when arriving in person at our main terminal stations, Jamaica, Atlantic, or Penn, just 15 minutes prior to their departure. The new number is easy to remember. It's simple. It's 718-LIRR CARE. And riders' calls will be answered by our dedicated customer service representatives. The call, as I mentioned earlier, is a 24/7, 7 days a week, holidays, and it's open to all and any who have mobility issues, including not only those limited to who use wheeled mobility devices, but perhaps elderly, perhaps injured, perhaps others that may need assistance, visually impaired. So if anyone's traveling from an outlying station, we ask our customers call 2 hours in advance prior to their trip. We've reduced that time. And then we also have the customer service desks at Penn, where our ticket offices are, at Atlantic and Jamaica. And again, those folks can arrive 15 minutes prior to their train departure. Our ambassadors will be stationed at those terminals, and they're daily from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. to provide that necessary assistance. So through this initiative, customers at Penn, Atlantic, and Jamaica will be served by one of our highly visible ambassadors, as I mentioned, and they'll coordinate with our train crews for station-to-station service. They'll escort the passenger to an elevator, if necessary, and to track level, where they'll be met by a conductor on the train who will assist with a bridge plate to help them onto the train. At the passenger's destination, the train conductor will assist with a bridge plate to ensure that they disembark safely. I'd like to thank the dedicated staff who worked together to put this together. This was something that was brought to my attention from the very first beginning of my tenure, where the customers, through my many discussions with them and at the customer forums, mentioned this area, and it's something that we've been working on, and I'm pleased to be able to provide this today. And we're going to continue to work on progress on this area, and we'll continue to provide updates as perhaps improvements are made. At the same time, we're going to continue to solicit customer feedback with the effort that's ongoing to see if there's areas that others feel that we can improve in this area. Something else I'd like to talk about that we rolled out recently, customer conversations. It's called Meet the Managers. Last Wednesday, we kicked off this program. So our riders can now fully begin to meet the station managers and talk to them openly about what services are available. We have a tremendous staff at the railroad that always aims to support our customers, and this opportunity to meet them, I think, will go a long way to customer input and satisfaction. Last Wednesday, I had the pleasure of joining our branch line manager, Jennifer Euline, at Syosset to hear from customers about what's working, what can be improved. Like so many of our frontline staff, she does really know her job. She cares deeply about improving service for our customers. And we've heard some great ideas that day, and we're encouraged by the feedback that we're receiving through this initiative so far. Just a quick update under Long Island Railroad Forward. We continue to make progress with upgrades, with repairs, with inspections of critical components. We continue to work with our partners at PSEG, and we continue to proactively address those issues that need to be addressed in advance of the pending storm seasons. Another area that customers continue to provide feedback on notifications, how they're displayed, and we'll optimize this program in the coming months. I'm sorry, I skipped a section. One of the other areas on the Long Island Railroad Forward has been the installation of highly visible delineators. I'm pleased to say that we've installed 284 of these of the 296 grade crossings. That'll be 6 months ahead of schedule once we finish the remaining. Furthermore, the pilot with Waze continues to improve drivers as we upgrade that system, and 30 of our grade crossings are now synced with the Waze app. And customers continue to provide feedback on how notifications are displayed, and we're going to continue to optimize that effort. Since we started this initiative on the grade crossings, we've only had one single incident at a grade crossing where there were no delineators, and we're going to continue working on and improving our safety of our system. The intent is to continue minimizing disruptions and ensuring safety. Another area where we're continuing following up on feedback is the car cleaning program. It continues to be noticed and appreciated by some of our customers. As of today, we have 46 new car appearance maintainers on site. They're located at 7 major hubs: Ronkonkoma, Long Beach, Huntington, Babylon, Atlantic, Port Washington, and Far Rockaway. The important part about that is they'll be doing car cleaning while the cars are in revenue during the day. They'll be able to jump on and take care of needed areas while it's in service rather than waiting till the end of the day. I'm also pleased to announce that 72% of our fleet now has GPS equipment installed, and the team is underway configuring data to push out more real-time information to our customers regarding the train locations. So I also wanted to just quickly touch on addressing safety along our freight routes. Since I started, we've been reviewing internally and meeting with New York Atlantic Railway to tackle the issues that have been raised. We're continuing to collaborate with all of our stakeholders, including Curis, which I had the pleasure of having a meeting with earlier in the week, last week that is, and we look forward to addressing these concerns, working with all parties together. And before I turn it over to my colleagues, I want to highlight the final outages for the double track location that are in our staff summaries. Additionally, from now until September 3rd, we'll be having some service changes along the Port Washington, Far Rockaway, Hempstead, Ronkonkoma, and Greenpoint branches due to work on mainline second track and positive train control. So I thank everyone, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on Long Island Railroad Forward and the other initiatives that are ongoing.
Questions or comments? Vinny?
So I certainly want to speak to the incident over the weekend, but before I do, I know I don't need to say this, but I want to say it, you know, I encourage you to continue to have faith in your senior staff. You have great people around you, and as you continue to transition, you should recognize the expertise in the different departments, and, you know, no need to clean house. I just, you know, no need to say it, but I feel the need and want to do so. As far as the incident over the weekend, I first want to acknowledge Smart General Chairman Anthony Simon, who, as you know, Phil, was early to the scene on Saturday evening, stayed overnight, and we were all there together all day yesterday doing a lot of work and challenging work. And I think it's important to know that when labor leaders are there with the workforce and with management unity, we get the results that we got which a lot of people may not understand. Certainly people that don't have the operational knowledge that I sometimes wish they knew. But we know that that was a very challenging situation that did not affect, as you said, service over the weekend. During the entire process, you have transportation crews that are remanipulating and rerouting because we don't have the use of a yard over the weekend and into the morning. Maintenance way and track personnel are doing a tremendous amount of manual labor because of the tight restraints and pulling things manually. The maintenance of equipment department and the rec crew, same thing, just really working hard to get things resolved. And I too want to thank Metro North Railroad for supplying the assistance that they did with their rec crew. It was kind of really good to see a bunch of vests all working together with Metro North Railroad and Long Island Railroad side by side. It's something that we should probably get used to down the road. But it also leads me to, to address to this committee the resources that we can use to maybe increase on some of the equipment that we have on our maintenance of equipment side, similar to what Metro North has, and maybe use their help and guidance to get us some of the things that we need so we can execute repairs and rescues. You know, we have an underground railroad on the west side now. We overbuilt in areas that were wide open. So the challenges we've experienced could continue and will continue. So, you know, just for me, it's always the same thing. Sorry, you may be tired of hearing it, but kudos to the workforce for what they did during a really challenging times. And kudos to you, Phil, and the staff for being there alongside of us. And we're going to be back in no time, and we'll learn the circumstances of what transpired, and we move on as we always do. I would like to just address one thing relative to the Long Island Railroad Care. I think it's a great program, and we truly support it. I would just encourage this committee to recognize the need for additional support if it takes off, because that's something that we're going to kind of learn what we may need as far as people in the field to support it based on the response that we get from it. And because of what you touched base relative to the freight involvement and our role in making sure that New York and Atlantic continues to do the right thing, I always like to keep on the radar, and something that I haven't given to you yet as the new president, Phil, that the ability way down the road we can take back freight. It's something that we can control our own destiny on if the powers that be don't do the right thing, or if we decide to put a plan in place down the road to take it back and have more control over our own destiny relative to the safety of freight operations on the railroad. I appreciate the time. I'm a little long-winded this morning, but I appreciate the opportunity.
No, thank you, Vinny, and I do appreciate the support we had of labor over the weekend. It adds to you know, the teamwork that was truly evident, the collaboration not only among the different functional groups of Long Island Railroad and its labor force, but also, as you mentioned, Metro North and Amtrak as well, supporting that effort.
Anyone else on any of that? I just wanted to comment on one other thing. There have been obviously a number of articles in the paper about the additional service on the East End that is coming for shuttle service in East Hampton and Southampton in the mornings to hopefully alleviate, in the afternoon, alleviate some of the transportation issues out there. And I want to thank Phil and Lisa, who's been a tremendous help with our elected officials out there to get that done. Hopefully the towns will support it both financially and by marketing as much as the railroad is supporting it. And so that it will be successful, so that it will be something that we can continue moving forward. But it's going to hopefully alleviate some of the transportation stress on the East End, which is essential to do, not just during special events like the U.S. Open, but on a day-to-day basis for their transportation needs. So thanks again for that. Randy, did you add
While you
something?
were talking about the extra service, I was very pleased to see that you're taking advantage of the soon-to-be-completed main track on the Ronkonkoma branch. So save me having to talk about it later. Thank you.
Safety report?
Good morning. Our safety report can be found on page 25 in your book. And keeping with our theme under a new administration, we have two major customer and employment engagement activities in the month of June. For us, our safety performance relies very heavily on being able to target our efforts. And what better way to target our efforts than by communicating with the people that are experiencing safety at the Long Island Railroad. So for our customers, in partnership with New Jersey Transit and New York City Transit on June 28th, we did our customer engagement activity. We try to do it at least twice a year. The theme is Let's Travel Safely Together. And this go around, we introduced a safety wheel to even further encourage that engagement with our customers. So customers that answered a safety question were eligible then to enter a raffle to win a monthly pass or 2 10-trip passes. And we found that it was very helpful to us because in that interaction we were able to actually determine very specific needs that our customers had. Thanks to Linda Katz and Sarah Armagan, we were able to actually go out and take care of those needs. So we're going to continue to foster that engagement through these types of activities, because what better way to learn than to actually speak to people about what they're experiencing. Also in June, we did our focus day with our employees, which again is another opportunity for us to kind of take a step back. I really have time set aside for our employees and their supervisors and managers to engage in conversation about how the employees are experiencing safety. We continue to focus on our confidential close call reporting system. Soft tissue injuries, unfortunately, are the largest type of injury, so really focusing on strategies for how to approach your work to try to avoid those types of injuries. So again, we will continue to do those quarterly focus days in order to have that conversation. And again, while safety is infused and embedded throughout our interactions every day, it's nice to have that dedicated time to really take a step back and say, hey, let's everybody focus on safety and really make that a priority for the moment. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions on the safety report? If not, thank you very much. Capital construction?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to give a quick report on East Side Access. With the effort that we have to remain transparent on. Use the microphone, okay. Milestone in the East Side Access project to talk about this month. Work to upgrade the signal system in Harold Interlocking has been completed, which provides an immediate benefit to the Long Island Railroad users and customers. And I want to thank the railroad for their tremendous partnership in this really complicated effort to cut over the signal system, which involved challenges of coordination and testing and force account support and many different other elements of support. The new microprocessor-based signal system that controls train movements through the interlocking is now in use, which provides riders on the railroad and Amtrak with a more dependable trip through that major intersection of passenger rail on the East Coast. The new switches and tracks have also been installed as part of the larger work in Harold, and this means that for the first time, all trains can access any of the 4 East River tunnels, and that really is, as I think I've said before, a major improvement to flexibility, reliability, and operational flexibility on the part of the railroad. And as part of my initiative to be more transparent about everything that's going on East Side Access, we talked to the press about this change, and it did actually yield, I thought it was a pretty arcane subject, signal cutovers, but it yielded a fair amount of positive coverage, in particular in Newsday, because people were interested by the fact that this, long-awaited project is actually having benefits and impacts now. So the other thing I wanted to talk about today is where we are with Amtrak, and it is a positive story. Since I talked to you a couple months ago about the challenges we were having with Amtrak support, they really have upgraded their performance. This began in May, and now what we're seeing through mid-July is that we've gone from 40% of, actually we were in the 20s and 30s% back when I reported to you about the direct electric traction power work in Harold Interlocking on behalf of East Side Access. and we were in the 30s and 40s on access and protection support in terms of their staffing and their ability to fulfill their commitments to support the project. In the last couple of months, we're in the mid 80s in terms 80% in terms of direct work. That's the work performed by Amtrak, and even higher with respect to access and protection. And that is a real sea change since, frankly, we started talking in public together about this particular challenge. The result is that we are now able to get 80+% of the tasks planned, completed, as planned, on schedule. And in fact, in July, in the first 2 weeks of July, we've been able to accomplish 93% of the scheduled tasks. So I have acknowledged that progress to Amtrak. We have a lot of issues with Amtrak, so we're dealing with them a lot. But I didn't want it to go unmentioned to all of you because we did highlight it a couple months ago. And obviously, this is something that we're going to have to continue to work on because this project is going on for several more years, and the Amtrak role in this project at least continues through 2021. One change that we are making, and it's the product of our dealings with Amtrak, is that we are going to take the direct work. Amtrak has said to us that they've asked us to, in effect, turn that work that was supposed to be performed by them into third-party contracts. They've given us assurance that they'll take responsibility for the labor issues associated with that, and we're prepared to move forward with that together with them. The result is that we need to carve some work out of contracts that were either underway or in process and redesign it and reschedule it, which does have cost implications that we're talking to Amtrak about. But that is a procurement that's actually on the boards for this month, and you'll hear about that a little bit later. It's a departure from how we've done work in the past, but it is something that I think everybody's enthusiastic about. Amtrak wants to hire more workers and wants to train more workers, but they have not been able to hold on to them and to fulfill all of the requirements to date. So that's one positive step forward. Another element of the Herald work is that following completion of the signal system and the main line 4 cutover, the next phase is track reconfiguration and infrastructure renewal in another area. And again, we're working very, very closely with Phil and his team. This is the northeast quadrant and the southeast quadrant work. So new tracks and switches will replace the existing Long Island, Port Washington 1 line and Amtrak New Haven 1 tracks over separate outages in the coming months. We've commenced some of these outages. Phil and team have been managing the schedule and service implications very, very closely. The purpose of this work is to create a new dedicated route for Amtrak, which will provide them with direct access through the interlocking to the East River tunnels. And this is one way we're untangling this tremendous bottleneck through the system. And there's more work coming on the southeast quadrant as well, which will be, as I've said before, the last East Side Access contract, a milestone I think all of us have been waiting fervently for quite some time, among other milestones that have been fairly delayed. I'm not going to go into the details, but again, this is going to this is going to be a challenging contract in part because it is going to daylight and connect the tunnel system to right in the middle of the interlocking. So you'll be working in the middle of the interlocking. You've got to underpin the 39th Street Bridge. This is going to be a hell of a way to end all the work in Herald interlocking. But I think that with Phil's team and with the greater coordination and cooperation we're getting from Amtrak, I'm very optimistic that we're on the right track, so to speak, in this last major piece of work as well. Thank you.
Any questions for Jano? Randy?
It's not a question. I just wanted to, I wanted to share a comment from a friend of mine who knows about this, and he says that Herald is almost without precedent. It's the only interlocking that has triple redundancy. If one crossover goes, there seem to be at least 2 others that can function in a similar manner, and it was very impressed by. So this was a major, major accomplishment for the project. So I didn't want these comments just to die in my computer. I wanted to share.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, it also is a showcase for our Long Island Railroad customers that we're not waiting until December 2022 to show them improvements to the system, that there are a lot of improvements that have already been implemented and that are being used every day by the railroad to get people to and from where they're going. While the new station may wait till December 2022, a lot of the other work that is important is already being used by our customers. And that is something I think that we continue to have to market to show them they're already getting benefits from East Side Access. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Police report.
Good morning. System-wide, the MTA Police Department continues to do well. For the month of June, we're down 23% in major felonies, and year-to-date, we're down 4% in major felonies. Long Island Railroad specific, year-to-date, we're down 6 crimes, or 11%. Grand larcenies continue to be our largest issue. And, of course, the grand larceny problem is primarily people leaving unattended packages or bags on the platform or on the train, although we did have 2 instances where property was taken directly from the person without any force being used, and that's why it's classified as a grand larceny. The one felony assault we had was on one of our police officers who was attempting to make an arrest, and the individual being arrested resisted. And then the one burglary that we had for the month of June was a newsstand that was broken into at Jamaica Station, and cash was taken. Our homeless assistance program turned out to be a very big success during the spring months, where we were able not just to address the homeless situation, but find some permanent solutions for people who have chronic homelessness through the use of some city resources and reconnecting them, in one instance, with family members who were searching for them and were anxious to get them back into the family relationship. Outside of that, we are continuing to aggressively patrol the train stations, and in the Grand Central and Penn stations in particular, we have increased patrol with the assistance of the state troopers and with the National Guards.
Thank you very much, Chief, for that very good report. Any questions or comments for the Chief? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to information items. Penn Station retail development.
Yeah, Mitch, there's 4 information items in the book. We have staff here to answer any questions on any of these 4. With regards to 2 of them, the September timetable and track work program, I'd just like to emphasize that again, that's in the book. But also with regards to positive train control, I'd just like to emphasize how much Long Island Railroad leadership management is heavily focused on ensuring that comes in, and we're confident that we will be in full federal compliance by the end of the year at this point.
And I know that PTC will be reported on at CPOC this afternoon in that regard. Are there any questions on any of the 4 items? Penn Station, environmental audit, September timetable, or PTC status? Okay. If not, item 6, which is the rules of conduct, has been withdrawn, and we will be following up on that with briefings for the committee within the next 2 months. So we'll move on to procurements. Page 84.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 2 items in this month's procurement package, the total amount of $7.4 million. There are no items in the competitive section and 2 items in the competitive section in the amount of $7.4 million. There are no ratifications this month. The first item in the competitive section is a request for MTA Board approval to award a 3-year estimated quantity contract in the amount of $6 million to Nassau Intercounty Express NICE Transdev for scheduled and emergency bus services on an as-needed basis. Under this contract, Transdev will provide Long Island Railroad with bus service on an as-needed basis with no minimum obligation or expenditures. This contract is based on a ride of a competitively negotiated contract between Nassau County and Veolia Transportation, awarded on December 23, 2011. Long Island Railroad currently has 3 bus providers under contract who both support scheduled and emergency assignments. However, only one provider out of the 3 has the capacity to offer a significant fleet of coach buses approximately 30 buses. For large assignments, reliance on a single supplier is inadequate to address the extensive schedule of planned service outages required for upcoming events and projects such as the annual track program and Long Island Railroad expansion project, where Long Island Railroad will need to consistently provide alternate and supplemental bus service during scheduled track outages. The second item is a request for MTA Board approval to award a contract modification to LK Comstock and Company in not to exceed amount of $1,404,427 to furnish material for the new track and signal systems, including communication equipment, cable splice kits, cable terminations, 85-foot wood poles, ballast mats, and a switch tie. This modification also includes the installation of the wood pole switch ties and cable splice kits. The change order is a modification to contract number 6257 with Comstock for the design, build, track, and system installation for the new second track on the main line Ronkonkoma Branch Phase 2. These items are submitted for your consideration.
Questions or comments on either of these two items? If not, any questions or comments on either of these two?
Question is going to be on the modification to the GCT.
Oh, okay. We'll wait on that one. Okay. If not, I'll make a motion to approve these two items, or a second. Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse from the trans-dev vote.
The first one?
Yes.
You have that? Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to capital construction procurements.
Morning.
Good morning.
Capital construction's procurement package this month totals $32 million. Begins on page 88 of your book. There are no competitive items. There are no non-competitive items. There are 2 competitive items and 2 ratifications. The first item, Jana mentioned earlier, requests that the board adopt a resolution and authorize the use of the request for proposal method to solicit a design build construction contract for Harold Systems electric traction catenary work. This is contract CHO 63. The work to be performed under this contract was intended to be performed by Amtrak Forces. However, Amtrak has now advised us that they do not have the resources to perform this work in time to support the East Side Access schedule. Amtrak has agreed to allow this work to be performed by a third-party contractor, and Amtrak will continue to provide the required protection support services. The second item requests board approval of a modification to the East Side Access GCT concourse and facilities fit-out contract for the installation of power cables, conduits, and other infrastructure needed to support digital signage panels for information and advertising within the new LIRR concourse. The cost of this modification is $1,612,875, and these 2 items are submitted for your consideration and vote.
Questions or comments on either of these 2 items? Chuck, did you want to talk about the second one?
I have a couple of questions on GCT. First of all, correct me if I'm wrong, but Picone and Chabon are both Dragados owned companies, are they not?
Yes, that's correct.
So you have one company, whether they're called a joint venture or not, it's Dragados, right?
Correct.
Number 2, if you go to the original amount of this contract, and this is an issue that keeps coming up, it started out at $404 million, then it went to $428, and we have been adding to it all the way through without any kind of competitive bidding in between. Is there a reason why that is appropriate?
Well, first of all, the move from 404 to 428 was, I think, options that were built into the original contract. So I think that's part of the base that we all approved in due course. Look, I mean, the reason for doing change orders, in effect, rather than bidding work, is if a contractor, as in this case, is in control of an area, the idea of trying to bring another contractor in to perform a smaller scope of work risks claims of disruption, claims of interference, and the reality is, and we've seen it time and again, I mean, these are general discussions. You always look for opportunities to optimize the outcome, but the The reality is that when you have a contractor who is controlling an area and you ask another contractor to come in, the market usually does not yield a lot of positive competition. You are, in many cases, and this is why we do our estimates, better off coming up with an estimate of what you think that scope of work is and negotiating like heck to make sure that the contractor who controls this area does not, in effect, take advantage of their position to give you a price that's non-market. So we have, in every case with a mod like this one or otherwise, you have an estimating process and then you have a negotiation. And I think you'll see in the write-up of this one, that took place and we were successful in negotiation. But your point is well taken, which is when you're doing this is why you want to avoid change orders, because you don't want to be in a position where you're over a barrel with a contractor because he or she controls an area and you can't get other contractors to come in. In this case, the change is really on us, because the original design of this, for better, we're just dealing with the realities, did not provide the type of digital capacity that has become a given in today's communications and public environments, right? So we needed, albeit late in the East Side Access game, to add that capacity so you could have proper customer communications and valuable advertising. In this case, we're doing an advertising contract that is going to actually offset a huge amount of this additional cost.
Let me tell you why I stated that in two parts. Obviously, the decision as to appropriateness and necessity rests with you and your colleagues, and I do not mean to challenge it in any way.
Yeah.
My concern here was market power, and I think you just emphasized it again. Here are two of the four Dragados entities, theoretically competing, joint venturing, etc., with one another, with enormous market power by reason of their large size. And as you point out, they are able to dissuade others from coming in to compete or take on a piece of it. And it's an issue I would urge you to give some thought to, as I know you probably already have, in terms of future use of these kind of entities, because their sheer market power, put aside the antitrust laws for a moment, their sheer market power creates an ability to dominate both government, MTA, and other potential competitors. It's something that's worth focusing on in greater detail. And maybe, Scott, in your review of procurements, is something you might give some consideration to. We have at least two of such entities now in the making, Dragados being one and the other Spanish company being the other.
Any other questions or comments on these two items? Ira?
Yes, regarding the Parsons, whatever, the WSP USA STV Parsons contract, we've seen this a number of times. This one, I think.
I don't think can we wait on that for a second? We haven't gotten to that yet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Wait, let's do these two first, and then he'll talk about that one. We'll go from there. All right? Any other questions or comments on these two? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we're good with that. Now the next two.
All right, there were two ratifications this month. The first item requests that the board ratify a modification to the general engineering services contract for the East Side Access project to provide construction phase services through the end of 2018 in the amount of $28 million. This is our annual replenishment of funding for construction phase services. This year we've added a new feature to the contract, and that we've established a target pricing structure which will provide an incentive in the form of shared savings if the consultant is able to complete the work below established targets, and fee reductions if the targets are not met. The second item requests that the board ratify a modification to the East Side Access Systems contract, that's CS 179, in order to upgrade required electrical panels and install additional conduits. The cost of this modification is $2,366,000, and these two items are submitted for your consideration and vote.
Now, Ira.
Sorry about that.
Quite all right.
Yeah, because this one's a ratification. This one's probably one of the record holders for modifications and the percentage amount that it's gone over the original contract, and that's because it seems because of convenience. And I note the new pricing structure, which is supposed to address some of the ongoing issues with it. For the future, I mean, if if we knew, how come we didn't know this? I don't know if there's anybody left that can tell me this. And how come we didn't know this going into this contract, that we would, this contract would be, a very long contract, and we keep adding and adding to it? I mean, it seems to make sense once you have them on board to continue with them. It's just, it'd be good to have known that going into it rather than have to approve so many additional work orders.
Well, I agree with you. And it's one of the reasons that I went to this. I mean, this is a contract that was, carries with it a lot of the challenges, shall we say, that East Side Access has faced. It's grown in part because of the constant redesign of the work, as you had these multiple packages, as packages had to shed scope because they couldn't get the work done, whether it was Amtrak related or otherwise. So there's been this ongoing constant redesign that has grown the scope of the contract ad infinitum. And I don't disagree with you, because we think that the responsible thing, given where we are in the project, is, and I had discussions with the contractor, which is 3 premier engineering firms, about, I said, the board may want to rebid this contract. There is there are downsides to that, in the sense of the disruption of the work and the possibility of, would you be able to assemble people who knew the job to continue? So what we did instead was to radically alter the structure of the contract, to add the incentive structure for savings, and also to reduce the CPS. The fee percentage has been reduced by a couple of points, significant reduction. Evan, what was that? It's to 6% from. It's a couple points. 8%, I believe? It was a couple points down in terms of percentage. We added the shared savings component, and we added a significant, in effect, a penalty structure if you go over the pricing, so that their fee gradually disappears as they get as the costs go over budget, in effect. So I think this is the best outcome, and we've tried to address what I think is some legitimate concerns you were raising.
It's more of in the future, when we look to do a large project. I mean, we may be doing design build, which means everyone's together. So this may not be an issue, but to package it together. I mean, this is an infinitum project, if you will. I guess it's unique that way, but I still think for the future we do big projects, and it'd be good to look to not have this happen again.
I think design build is, as you say, really a huge strategy for avoiding this kind of stuff.
Any other questions or comments on either of these 2 items? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is approved. I think that completes the procurement section.
Yes.
There are performance reports in the book. If anybody has any questions about any of the performance reports, now's the time. Ira?
Yes, regarding our diesel fleet, I noticed that for a time now we've been performing under our goal. I just wonder what's being done to keep the diesel fleet performing as well as it should.
I believe I'll have to get back to that, Ira, because our operations folks are still at West Side Yards right now. So he was there all night, and he's still there now. So I don't have the answer to that right now, but we'll get that to all the board.
Okay, and in regarding that, I mean, I think our if you look at our MDBF, even our goal MDBF is relatively low for our diesel fleet. It's certainly performing at par or whatever about the level that the Metro North Genesis fleet's performing at. And I noticed there's a procurement to begin purchasing new locomotives for them. I think maybe we should, along our railroad, or we should work with Metro North on, if it's possible, to design a locomotive that'd be good for both Metro North and Long Island Railroad, rather than us having this a special locomotive, because I think we're going to have to replace our fleet in the next capital program.
Yes, I will say
common
that
design would be a good idea.
The diesel fleet is something I've been discussing with the staff. I know that is an area where we do need to address, and it's something that we're looking at right now as we develop our longer range needs. It is something that is an area that is important to us.
Thank you.
I just had one question. Do we know, or do we have numbers from the last time the U.S. Open was at Shinnecock as to whether or not how these numbers, the 77,000 number, compared to what we transported the last time? Go ahead, Mark. Do you have that?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let me just pull to that page. The total was 77,673. That was this time.
Right.
And I'm just checking through my notes here, see if I can quickly find the 17 figures. The 2004, the total was.
I believe it's 5% more. If you look at page 116 in your book, you'll see next to the picture, it talks about 78,000 customers, 5% above the 2004 number.
Okay.
Thanks.
And they're already planning on coming back, so assuming we'll get 5% more, if not more than that.
And they know the railroad's the way to go because they've been in and out.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? If not, motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Thank you all very much. Thank you, Phil.